I see their faces in the dark, etched like shadows on my skin. Demons stacked like cordwood, weighing heavy from within. Some wore evil like a crown, deserved the dirt, the final bow. But the innocent, their whispers haunt me even now. Tell me, Lord, what submarine's heart's supposed to feel? Numb or broken, hollowed out or steel. I pulled the trigger, followed orders, played the game. Now I'm left here counting crosses, drowning in the shame. No child's hunt for rabbit tracks, no granddad's rifle in my hands. Just a desert full of questions, blood and oil on foreign sands. They said we build a nation, but the mortar's mixed with lies. Turns out freedom's just a flag we draped.
Hey, welcome back to Knights of the Storm yet again. Good to see y'all here already in the chat. Awesome. Today is the 11th of April, 2026, and today we're joined by a very special guest. I've been looking forward to this for a little bit now. It's retired Marine Gunnery Sergeant Ryan Stevens, highly decorated Marine that went from special operations combat into the farm life. And it's going to be an interesting conversation today. A lot of things that we all need to be looking at today, no matter our challenges we went through coming up. We need to start looking at how to take care of our families. So that's why this is a very special interview for me to go through. You run Full Armor Farms, and today we're going to talk about your backstory again, the time in the military. We're not going to spend too much time on the military. I'm more interested in how to overcome and apply what you've learned, Ryan, to today's life that we all need to be focusing on. But before we get to you, Ryan, I do want to introduce my co-hosts. We have the lovely Lady of Liberty, Miss Karen Carpenter. What's going on, Karen?
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It's great to meet Ryan and to see everybody in the chat today. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Right on. And over in the pilot seat there, the co-pilot seat is Ashley. She's running our chat. So if you got any questions, please put them in the chat. And there's a little question emoji you can use if you have questions for Ryan or any of us. She's going to be snipering it and putting them on screen if need be. So how you doing, Ashley?
Doing very well. I'm happy to be here with you. It's very nice to meet you, Ryan. Thank you for taking the time to speak with us, and always good to see you, Karen and Jason, and the chat.
Right on. All right. And our special guest, Ryan. We've been talking the past couple days, and we found out we have a lot in common as far as where we started in the civilian life, how we got into the military life, our MOSs, as a matter of fact, and our aspirations in the military. And what we haven't really talked about is the struggles coming out. And I really do want to focus a little bit on that as well. So Ryan, how you doing? Tell us about yourself, man.
Hey, thanks for having me on, guys. How you guys doing today?
We're doing great.
Yeah.
All right, so
windy day here in Maine. It's kind of cold, 40 degrees, but spring is finally sprung. So, no.
I just mowed my grass 2 days ago. Spring is here as well. I mowed my grass 2 days ago. First one, I got the movement started across the neighborhood. Now everyone feels like they have to mow their grass, right? And literally a day later, the dandelions are like a foot tall. So I'm going to be mowing here until that's over. And my wife's going to be sneezing because she has the allergy issues. But let's start off with your farm. So I know most of your interviews, and I watched all of them that I could find. They go into your background of the military service. But I want to start off with the farm first and then backtrack it to how you got to where you are. And the reason I want to do that is, and I think anyone who's in a decent position in life right now that has found their way, when we try to talk to family members or friends or people we know and give them advice on financials, on life advice, they tend to look at you like, well, you had it easy. You just got lucky. I get a lot of this in my life, and I'm like, no, you don't even understand. So let's start with the end state where you're at now. Talk about your farm, and then we'll go back to the beginning and see how you got to where you are, because I think God plays a lot of role in that. Actually, I'm missing something, ain't I? The verse of the week. Okay, pause on that. Put a pin in that, Ryan. Let's do the verse of the week. I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm just super excited for this interview, so I'm a little ahead of myself. So we'll do the verse of the week real quick and then jump to that question. All right, so this is Ephesians 6, 12, and 13. Very familiar verse that a lot of people know about, and I picked it just for you, Ryan, because that's what your farm. I'm sure you named it from this. But to give context, we always try to give context here at Knights of the Storm. So Ephesians 6, it's the final chapter of Paul's letters to the Ephesians, focusing on practical Christian living with families and workplaces, followed by a famous call to spiritual readiness. And readiness is a big thing in the military. I think you've applied that to your personal life, and I'll go ahead and read the verses. Verse 12 says, "For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Wherefore take unto you the whole armor of God, that you may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all to stand." And I usually we'll go around the table. I have nothing more to comment on that. I think it speaks for itself. What are your thoughts on that, Ryan?
It's one of my favorite verses. Yeah, that's what we named the farm after. Is full armor farm is named after the Ephesians. Yep, putting on the full armor of God. Yep.
Right on, Karen. What do you think?
I think that, as I always say, this is a battle of good versus evil at this point, and that it truly is important that we put on the full armor of God, guard our heart, guard our soul. Absolutely. Good reminder.
And Ashley, to you. I see we have the kitty cat, by the way.
We do. We have 2 of the 4 that are in the office working, and that is Teddy Bear and Tommy Kitten. So they're here with us, helping us out today. But I agree. This is one of my favorite Bible verses, and I think that it states very well the times that we find ourselves, which does feel like a spiritual battle. And even if we could pinpoint exactly who's doing what, I think that we have to understand, at least for me, that they are working for the Prince of Darkness. I do think it's intentional, but maybe their hearts have just been co-opted by an evil spirit. I'm not sure. But anyway, I do think that it speaks to the time, and I think that it can offer some peace for us trying to figure out the current environment that we find ourselves in. And I think it says to us that that's what if you understand that, then it helps put a lot of other things in perspective. So it can ease your mind in your wondering in some ways. I really love it.
It's pretty much my thoughts as well. So let's go back to the question that I posed before. Let's talk about your farm. First off, I'd like to know what you do on your farm, like what are your products and stuff like that, and just talk about the farm a little bit.
Yeah, me and my wife operate Full Armor Farm in New Vineyard, Maine, which is in northwestern Maine. We have 100 acres, about 20 acres in pasture. We do a little bit of everything, kind of a all-season farm. We usually have something going on all the times of the year. We do Scottish Highland beef cattle. We do chickens for eggs. We do meat birds, ducks, turkeys. We're coming up on a fun time of year now with springing that we're going to be picking fiddleheads here soon. So that's one of the kind of cool things I offer in my store is freeze-dried fiddleheads. Not a lot of people have eaten them around the United States, so it's something that I just offer so people can try them, say that they've had them. But fiddleheads it's the ostrich fern, and it comes up right in springtime, and mostly along the riverbanks and stuff. And when it's before the fern actually comes out and fans out, it's curled up into a little ball, and that's when you pick them. So my children love going fiddleheading with us. So it's kind of like a thing we do every year as a family together. And of course we enjoy a bunch of them, eating them at the house. And we'll take my favorite recipe is putting them in a pan, and you broil them in the oven. But you put what I do is I make this like 50-50 of birch syrup and usually like olive oil, and basically mix them together in that, and then I spread them on the pan, and then I sprinkle them with maple sugar. So that's the other thing we do on the farm. We do maple syrup and birch syrup, and some of the products from maple. We also do sugar too. So and then I've been kind of playing around with like small batch stuff for maple syrup. We do like a aged maple syrup in a barrel. Right now we've been doing peach brandy aged maple syrup. So we buy in these old peach brandy oak barrels that used to have peach brandy in them, and then we put maple syrup in them and age them for 6 months to a year, and then put them in bottles and ship them to you guys. So, and then actually I got a couple ones couple new formulations that I might put out this year. We're working on garlic maple syrup infused, and then I did cayenne infused maple syrup, which we grew cayenne peppers in our high tunnel last year. And so I was like, well, let's see if they mix well with maple syrup, and they do. So I might be, I don't know. I like it so much that I don't know if I want to share it with everybody.
You mentioned the tunnel thing on another podcast you were on. I don't know what that is. What is the hyper tunnel? What is it?
High tunnel. It's kind of like a greenhouse. They're kind of round in shape, or they make ones that are kind of shaped like this, I guess. I can't remember. It's the type of there's a specific name for it, but they're basically they're not like a greenhouse, but they're kind of like a greenhouse. They extend your season. We have 2 types of high tunnels on our farm. I have a small one that's it's like 25 by 40. It's got single plastic over it, so it basically extends our season on the front side and the back side of our growing season, so we can start planting stuff in like April or May, versus having to wait till basically the end of May before we can start getting stuff in the ground. And then it extends our season on the back side. Like my small high tunnel right now, we already have garlic coming up that we planted in the fall. That stuff's already up, probably 2 or 3 inches high for some of it. And the stuff that we planted outside in raised beds hasn't even made it out of the ground yet, because the ground's still kind of frozen and, hard. So it helps get, things started quicker. And then I have my big high tunnel, which is 100 feet long. That's a double walled high tunnel, which it's designed where you can actually grow year round in it. It has the fans, the louvers, and it even has an oil furnace in it too. So, but with the price of oil, I ain't run that thing.
Right. Well, I tried doing indoor. I got a 30 by 50 workshop I built here. I think it got done mid last year or maybe early last year. And I built myself indoor garden with little tubs, and it didn't work out so well. So that's why I was curious about the high tunnel thing. I might try to do something where I get natural sunlight. I had, number one, a lack of pollinators getting in there. And number two, the lights were just killing me, the energy cost wise. So, and then there's, going to be fertilizer issues as well. So, which I know, Karen she was the first one to start talking about the fertilizer issue with what's going on in the Middle East. And I do want to pick your brain on the Middle East situation before we're out today. But let me throw it around the table here and see if Karen and Ashley have any questions about your farm, and the sustainable, because you're doing what, they talk about sustainable at the World Economic Forum, all this stuff. It's really about them making money. But sustainable really means not requiring someone else to be self-sustainable. And that's what I see you doing on your farm. That's why I'm really interested in talking to you about the farm more than anything else, and how you do things. Let me throw it over to Karen. What you got, Karen?
Okay, I'm curious if you have a more natural or regenerative farm. How dependent or worried are you about the situation in the Middle East as far as the cost of your fuel, diesel fuel, or for any machinery that you use, or any do you use fertilizers that would be may be impacted by the lack of the supply chain interruptions? How will the supply chain interruptions affect you, and what remedies do you possibly see in order to be more fully independent for yourselves, if possible?
Yeah, I think the only real thing that we're dependent on from the Middle East is just the diesel fuel, and then any of the lubricants associated with that for running our equipment, and and of course plastic too. Plastic comes from all that stuff too. So plastic for the high tunnels and stuff. As for like fertilizer and stuff, we make our own here. We use the cattle poop, and then all the clean outs from the chicken houses, and I've made some relationships with some people that own horses too. So I'll go and clean out their horses, and grab some of that manure too, and mix it all in piles, and compost it. The other thing is my two boys, my 9-year-old and my 6-year-old, they do worm castings too. So they have worms that they feed, food scraps from the house, and they recycle them, and they turn them also into worm castings that we use too in the gardens. And then with the worm casting stuff, you can make compost tea. So, which is really good fertilizer too. And then, what's the other stuff? Comfrey leaf. I don't know if you guys have grown that before. But the strain, I can't remember the strain off the top of my head, but there's a specific strain of comfrey that's it's easy to get, but it doesn't propagate via air. It's only root bound, and you can use that to build your compost pile with too. And it's a very good plant to have around the farm. It's commonly known as bone knit. It's good for wounds and broken bones and stuff. So, yeah. Yeah, I think that's it.
Right on. Well, let's jump over.
I had one more question.
Go ahead.
A little follow. What about shipping costs? If you have products that you're manufacturing and they sound absolutely delicious, was it garlic maple syrup? That sounds interesting. But what about your shipping and packaging and shipping costs and that type of thing?
Yeah, I haven't put out the garlic yet. That's not for sale yet, but yeah, it's that's good too. That's one of those things. You make something so good and you're like, I don't know if I want to share it with everybody.
Yeah.
But for shipping costs, I have standard rates because I pay extra through my service provider for my website, so I could have better shipping rates. But I have, like, recently I checked rates versus like my rates for shipping versus like just sending it regular snail mail, and it's like 10x. So we pulled the trigger and bought feed for our chickens about 3 or 4 months earlier than we normally would, based on when our broilers are supposed to show up to the farm, just because we saw that diesel prices are spiking. Shipping costs are going to go up, especially, because we'll buy a pallet or two of chicken feed at a time. So that's going via freight. So it can get costly. I bought it right when the Iran thing kind of kicked off. It was like a week or two old, so prices hadn't really smashed hard on shipping yet. So I'll let you know next time I'll probably be buying another pallet of feed here soon, because it doesn't look like this Iran thing is gonna end anytime soon. So
Yeah, I agree. Very, very wise move.
All right. Well, Ashley, any questions on the farm there?
Yeah, so I was listening to your episode with Parallel Mike, and you were talking about originally you and your wife had bought this farmland as an investment, and then you made the decision that we were going to move towards this. So, can you walk us through one of the things that you said, and maybe you can expound on that a bit, was that people, one of the biggest mistakes that they make when they're making this decision is to spread themselves too thin, try to do too many things before really their skill set and understanding is at the level of mastery for a couple of these. And you had said that you started with chickens. So can you walk us through a little bit of what did that process look like for you? What were some of the challenges that you faced even at the beginning level at sort of this basic area, as many people are interested in trying to do, not everyone is in a position to have that much farmland, but to do what they can. So what are some of those challenges for like some of the basic stuff that you started with?
yeah, chickens are like the gateway drug to farming. No, so like when we first bought our property in 2016, it was basically 2 years before I got medically retired from the Marines. So me and my wife had wanted to buy land up here in Maine, because we're about 10 minutes from where my parents live and where I grew up. And she found the house and she fell in love with it, so we bought it. And our kind of thing was, hey, we'll just like Airbnb it until we decide to retire. And at that point in 2016, like I was expecting to do another 5 years before I retired. So like it was just really just an investment property in that respect. The property had all the fields on our property were pretty much almost overgrown when we bought the place. And it hadn't been an active farm for probably 15 to 20 years. So the only actually infrastructure on our farm that was there when we bought it initially was a farmhouse and a large barn, and then a chicken barn that was attached. So once we found out that I was, me and my wife were going to get medically retired, I was at Wounded Warrior Regiment in Portsmouth, Virginia. So I had a year of going through my med board stuff to actually build a business plan and talk to other farmers in the Virginia area. Me and my wife would go around to farms and just talk to farmers and see what they did. We try to see like how, where we really wanted to take the farm when we, got boots on the ground. So we weren't just spinning our wheels, so to speak. And what we actually, and you brought up the fact that, some people, they try to farm and they try to do everything all at once. And we were cognizant of that because, we had talked to other farmers, and that was one thing that they, hey dude, don't go over your skis because you'll crash. And then you'll get burnt out and you'll fail. So my business plan was built off doing hydroponic farming in a shipping container. So that's actually what we were going to do when we first got here. There was a company down in Boston, Massachusetts that were building those containers, and they were basically a turnkey system to grow hydroponically vertical within a shipping container footprint, and using, I think it was like less than 5 gallons a day of water. And I think at the time, this would be 2017, 2018, one of those shipping containers was like 120 grand. So you could be up and going, turnkey, 120 grand. And, basically what you'd be growing in one of those would be lettuces, small veggies. So you'd have to have like a CSA type setup, also with maybe selling direct to like a grocery store, something like that, to make it sustainable. So I had kind of worked that out. And then when everything was kind of final and we got here on the farm, me and my wife were just like, we were already, when I got medically retired, we were like $500,000 in debt. And so like, we were just like, do we really want to take on $120,000 more in debt and keep these wheels spinning? Because, now you're on a treadmill. Now you have to produce. Now you have to, so we kind of just, we didn't do that. And we just like, hey, let's just take it slow, get some chickens, like start building out infrastructure for the farm. Because there was none. I had to reclaim fields. I had to do a lot of sawing and basically reclaiming everything. All the trails and stuff were grown up. So I had to go back and reclaim that stuff. And so it was a lot of front end work that I had to do before we could even think about getting the type of animals that we eventually ended up with. Like cattle are just, it's a whole different ball game once you get those critters on deck, because they don't respect you. You don't have a good fence, they don't respect it. So you don't want to be over in your neighbor's field. I might have done this a couple of times, getting your cattle back. So, so, but it all worked out, I guess. But, long story short, we did, we ended up like, it was the first year, 2018, that we got here. We got chickens and cattle that first year, but we kept it pretty minimal. And we were doing like 200 taps on maple syrup and buckets. So we didn't have a ton of stuff at that point. So we were kind of taking it slow.
Yeah, I think, go ahead, Ashley.
Well, I just had one quick follow-up question, and maybe we'll get into this later. Like if you want to save it for later, that's fine. But one of the things that I think a lot of us are concerned about, it's something that Parallel Mike talks about, it's something that we're concerned with here, is this great taking, right? So even when people have their own land and their own infrastructure set up that they've worked hard to pay for and pay off, the potential for government, whether that is state, right? Whether that is state or federal, moving in, because we see these restrictions. And I know not everyone believes that these things are intentional. I happen to think that they are. I think that it is to usher in the financial reset of our currency and to continue to make things such as meat and beef products unavailable to us. We know that some of the think tanks, such as the World Economic Forum, want us to eat the bugs and things like that. So what is your how vigilant do you and your wife have to be in your local area and your local community to be on the lookout for this type of encroachment, like these things that are potentially coming in to try to prevent small business owners and local farmers from providing food for themselves and their community?
Yeah. Yeah. So COVID was kind of like when we kind of woke up to all like basically how they're attacking the farms and creating this, like they were killing chickens. And I mean, a couple years ago, we got a letter in the mail from the state of Maine saying that we had to quarantine our chickens because they might have the flu or something. And we're just like, well, that letter is pointless, but it's, well, I knew it was pointless because I don't believe in viruses, but it's a fear, it's a tactic to create fear and try to get people to, basically self-select their own stuff. And, but first, we're a small farm. So like a lot of these, big cullens are happening on these big farms that all their chickens are insured. So I think it's just this big circular money-making thing. They do it in the beef industry all the time. I've talked to some guys out west that, they'll they'll basically shut down the plants and create this like, oh, there's a shortage, or we can't harvest. And then basically they'll put the farmers in a predicament where they have to sell their cattle, because everybody's on these big farms that, sell beef are on like a 24-month cycle or something for, hey, at this time all this head is going to go and get go to the slaughterhouse, and they play off that to basically create a shortage in the stores, and then for them to also pay the farmer less and then make the most profit. So it's just this, I don't know, they're pretty good at it. The one way that we've kind of like pulled back and kind of basically secured our farm in the sense is that we pulled out of doing any like USDA contracts or working with the NRCS, any of these state government agencies that basically subsidize the farmers. It looks good on paper. I fell for it when we first started farming. We did a pollinator grant and like a couple other little grants. Like our small high tunnel was paid for by the NRCS. But what that does is basically it gives them access to your farm. They come on your farm, they map everything. So now they know all your resources, all your assets. It's no different in the military when we have sources and we use human sources to gather intelligence, and they're doing the exact same thing to the farms, and then they can use that against you. I mean, they'll come and test your soil. So the big thing in Maine that just happened about a year ago is a bunch of Maine farms got shut down because of the PFAS, basically the forever chemicals. And what they were doing, and I think this was in the 70s or 80s, they were spreading biosludge on a bunch of the Maine farm fields. They told the farmers it was safe, and because the farmers were getting free fertilizer, they didn't ask or seem to care. And of course, a lot of those farms prior already been passed down a generation or two. And now the chicken came home to roost. The government, the state of Maine, knew about these for 20 something years or more.
Oh, is Ryan frozen, or is it just my end? Oh,
he's back.
There you go. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Did I get cut off?
Just for a second, you froze, and I had some follow-on questions for you, but I think you answered them all. Thanks, Ashley. That was a great question, and that covered a lot. One more last question I have about coming out of the military. I don't know what you call it there in the Marine Corps, but in the Army, we call it Soldier for Life. It used to be called ACAP. Now it's called Soldier for Life, and we go through these different programs. One of them is called Boots to Business, and I don't know if you went through that or not, but we went through
Boots to Business.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you just for my sake, because I was curious. You being a prior Marine, or you're always a Marine, you're never a prior Marine, right? Always a Marine. Anyway, they really did push that using the different programs for prior service members to get these grants and FFA loans and stuff like that. And I was curious as to how much of that you used and how intrusive that becomes when you get wrapped up in those agencies. And what Ashley talked about, the great taking, that's actually where we left off last week on our last show. I was going to get into the tokenization of things, and that they want to survey everything, map everything, as you said, Ryan, and then put a value on it that is then wrapped up into kind of like a subprime loan bundle type thing. And that's going to be what backs the future digital dollar. In my opinion, it's going to be people's private land. I had some information on them already in Jersey. They're digitizing people's deeds that maybe they don't even have a mortgage on their property anymore, but somehow now they're part of an asset that backs something. I don't know, kind of a couple of different things there, but yeah, how much did you rely on the benefits that we get as especially disabled veterans? We get a few more benefits with tax breaks and things like that, which come at a cost as well. So I don't know if you want to talk a little bit more on that or not.
Yeah, when I was when I was at Wounded Warrior and going through the retirement stuff, me and my wife went through the Boots to Business stuff, which it was helpful because like I had never run a business before, so they had a lot of resources. But at that intersection, they're trying to pair you with other government agencies to get you to use their resources too. So it's a self-licking ice cream cone, obviously, but we kind of saw it for what it was. We used the resources that were available to try and, at least get our farm up and running. And, the FAA loan stuff was definitely offered. We just didn't go that route. We probably would have if we had, done the grow-tainer kind of thing. But we just, I don't know, by the grace of God, I guess, that we were kind of slowly getting sick of being slaves to debt. And it took me a little bit, like pre-COVID, it was when we kind of woke up to the whole debt enslavement thing. And then I think that's about around the same time the whole Great Taken came out too, the book. And, that COVID was like when, they were just handing money out left and right, and especially to farmers, and offering these the PPP loans and stuff. A lot of businesses around here in Maine took them, and I don't know who I was listening to at the time, but the guy was like, it might have been, I can't remember. Anyway, basically, I remember it because he's like, "Don't take any of the loans. Like, it's going to come back to bite you. This is the time to be lean on your farm, get out of debt, and just ride this out. Because on the back side of this, you'll be in a better position than these farms that took the money." And I mean, that was sage advice, because it seems like we're going to go into another really hard time, and I think it's going to be worse than COVID, to be honest with you. So we basically got serious about 5 years ago, and I basically scaled everything back on the farm. I half the amount of cattle I had. I basically, the only thing I was actually selling to the public at for a while was just my excess syrup and stuff. And what I did, instead of using resources for that to grow my business, I took all my my retirement income that I was getting, and I just threw it at the house and the farm, and we were able to pay off a 30-year loan in 8 years and get debt free. So
That's
now
amazing. That is amazing. I think I don't know if you know who Dave Ramsey is, but you can probably give him a lesson. Yeah.
Well, no, so yeah, I found Dave Ramsey because I had a Christian buddy that I was doing Bible study with. He lived in the same town as me. He was one of the game wardens for this area, and he was a Marine too. And he was like, had never been in debt. Like, he was just and he pressed it on me. He's like, "Dude, you got to get out of debt." He's like, "Get out of it's slavery." And I'm like, "Yep." And then you hear it enough and you're like, yeah, and the Bible talks about it, your debt to the lender. So it's a real thing. And I think debt actually has a weight on your soul, and people can shrug that off but I've been in debt most of my life, and now I'm not in debt, and I feel differently. I make different decisions. I'm looking at my farm differently, of what I want to do with it, and stuff that I thought I was going to do after I was debt free. I'm like, yeah, I don't want to do that anymore. I want to spend more time with my family, like do day trips or something, just take it in a different direction. And I'm not enslaved to that, because I don't have to make a ton of money now. So, but of course, other people's situations are a little bit different,
Talking about debt before we move on, I do want to throw in my personal experience with it. I've never had a huge amount of debt because I always had crappy credit. It's easy though. It's easy to get credit and it's easy to get into debt, but coming out of debt takes a plan. My wife and I, we had 2 pickup trucks and a nice Harley, expensive Harley that we were paying on monthly. And then plus you have to carry the full coverage insurance on them to satisfy the lender and all this other stuff. And we were saving to buy a house, and we were looking for a fixer upper, something we can buy for like $15,000-$20,000. Maybe not move into right away, but start working on the weekends. And of course, being military, we PCS a lot, so we couldn't really find anything that we would be able to get and then have enough time to work on that. But we had saved the money. We had saved the money because there was no way the VA loan was going to give us a loan on a fixer upper. But pretty much, I'm sure you know this, Ryan. The VA, your house has to be like immaculate to get the VA loan, right? Anyway, so we had saved that money, and I want to say we had around $14,000, $15,000 in the bank. That's it. And we went up to Fort Drum, New York. I was stationed there, and we lived in Watertown. And I was fixing to go on my first deployment, and I told my wife, I said, "Look, we owe X amount of money." So the motorcycle payment was getting ready to be paid off. Right, I had like a couple months left on that. It was going to be paid off. We had the 2 trucks, not much owed on them, because they were used trucks when we bought them. So I got one for $11,000, one for $10,500. So those were almost paid off. I said, let's take this money we saved, let's throw it at these vehicles, get out of debt with that. All we have is rent now. That's it. We just have to pay rent and utilities. And what ended up happening was, to my surprise, I deployed afterwards. Everything's paid off. I come back and we had more money in the bank than I could imagine because those payments went away. And I was getting, plus you get the hazard pay and stuff like that, the separation pay. So that was a little bit of a bonus while I was there. But being out of debt, your wealth accumulates so much faster, just because you're not paying 10, 15% or whatever to somebody else. And you get to, I mean, you'd be surprised if you break down, if people would stop and break down their monthlies. And I don't want to make this a financial show, but I'm just giving you my, hearing your story is kind of similar to mine. When you break down your financials monthly, if you're a typical American that has credit card debt, has multiple auto loans, you're paying that full coverage insurance. You've got, and then think about all the other subscriptions you have at Netflix and all this other stuff. Break it down and look at how much of your paycheck every month goes to somebody else in the form of interest or something you're not using, and then throw on top of that the 40 to 50% tax you're paying through all the various forms of taxes, state income tax, federal income tax. You really don't take anything home. You can never get wealthy, and you can't get independent like you are now. So I don't know. I just wanted to throw that out there, and I don't know if the ladies have anything to say on that. If you've worked
death
with
by 1,000
finances.
cuts,
Yeah, 1,000 cuts. There you go.
Yeah.
Karen, your thought on debt?
Of course we all, it's getting harder and harder to stay out of debt. People are using credit cards and payment plans for groceries, which of course is a trap. It's just a vicious cycle. I agree with all of you, and we all know it's best not to be in debt, but not being in debt is pretty tricky, and it's getting harder. Another thing that is just incredibly expensive these days is any kind of medical care. If you don't have full good insurance, and even if you do, copays are getting higher and higher, and insurance is getting less and less coverage. And I'm not a big fan of our medical system at all anyway, as everybody knows, but everything is costing more now. And if you want to repair, even if you have a working car, my daughter got rear-ended yesterday. Her car's totaled. She had a 2013 car with no car payment for many, many, many years. But now her situation will change. Most likely she'll end up buying a newer car. Her insurance will go up almost surely because the car will be of more value, and she may end up with a car payment. So even if you're doing your best to stay out of debt, your circumstances may change, and then you're caught in that trap. So it's something that all of us face and really have to do our best to navigate. And that's about all I have to say about it. I don't have any magic answers there.
No, that's a very good point, Karen, and I think Eric Peters would agree with you on the car thing. Um, when you get out of a car payment and you get the reduced insurance because you have a paid off car that is less valuable, easier to replace, it won't necessarily be replaced if it's totaled. They'll give you a cash payment, and then you're sucked back into the system. And one thing, totally different topic, but they're slowly taking these cars off the road through emission standards and things like that. So yeah, we got to be real careful about not getting sucked back into the debt trap. Let's go over to Ashley, and then after that, I do want to get into your backstory, Ryan. That's very fascinating to me, and we'll just let you go to town on that. So, Ashley, your thoughts on the debt thing?
Yeah, I agree. I think that it is difficult. And I also think that as we have, in some cases, certainly not all, and I think a lot of people that are in our chat or this community are trying to educate their children on a lot of these basic life skills. But I think for a lot of the population, that has been lost: how to balance a checkbook, how to make sure that you're not overdrafting, explaining overdraft, explaining the perils of debt with your children, things like that. And even if you do, just like what Karen was saying, there's so many factors that go into that, especially for people that are in their young, like 20s and 30s in today's day and time, trying to become homeowners. Often they've been saddled with student debt. We know all this. But the last thing that I wanted to say was what you were talking about, Ryan, very much sounds to me like Confessions of an Economic Hitman, except for it's not an entire country, but it is for certain industries that are very key to be taken over, or to be that are potentially on the radar for what would be useful down the road. And I do see that with a lot of the big government grants, like you said. I mean, often you're beholden to them, and it is your compliance that is needed for those things. So I see it as Confessions of an Economic Hitman, and also then you're beholden to them as the rule makers for arbitrarily deciding that your chickens have bird flu or whatever it is. So it's really, it's a perilous environment for people that are trying to be financially independent in this system, as well as protect their land, provide for their family, all these things. Really challenging.
Yeah, if I can add to that, when I found out I was getting put over to Wounded Warrior to get potentially medically retired, I was living like a rock star, um, like I thought I was a rock star. So we had like a 3,500 square foot house in Virginia, in Chesapeake, Virginia, 2 brand new cars. I had a house that I was renting out that I previously bought in Hubert, North Carolina, when I was stationed at Camp Lejeune. And then we had also bought the farm up here. So I was extended to the brink. So when I got ushered out of ST6, what they blessed me with was they cut off all my special pay. So I was getting jump pay and some other specialty pays for being in special operations and working with those guys. So it cut out like $1,500 a month of income, like that the next month it was gone out of my paycheck. And I was like, like, it was like a wake up moment. And so me and my wife were both, it's funny how God works. We threaded the needle together and got medically retired. She got separated from the Marines, but got a pension. But we were able to go through all that together, and then we got retired at the same time together. But we were able to. We got rid of our house we were renting and went from a 3,500 square foot house down into like an 800 square foot apartment. We got rid of both our brand new cars, went down into an older SUV. And then we put the house in North Carolina up for sale. We lost money on that, but in the end, it's, that was like $140,000 of debt that we just scraped off, that we didn't have to worry about anymore. So it's doable. It's a huge sacrifice, but that's the thing. People say, "Oh, I'll never get out of debt." It's like, well, you just have to make some sacrifices, because But what you were saying about the farming stuff, it's kind of crazy because you have to look at the other stuff that the government owns and subsidizes. So they subsidize heavily corn, soybeans, of course, ethanol stuff. They also, like around here, all of the hay fields in my town are all gobbled up by an organic milk farmer because he's heavily subsidized by the government. Now, my opinion on milk, at least the stuff that's been processed, is it's not good for you. It's probably detrimental to your health. That's the whole reason probably the government subsidizes it in the first place. But it's not a fair market, and the fact that he gets extra money, it props his business up. It couldn't stand under its own weight, and so it clogs up fields that other farmers would actually be able to utilize to grow different products. So it bottlenecks the whole industry because it's not fair. But that's the world we're living in, I guess.
Yeah, the whole subsidy thing is about control. I've seen that in Southern Illinois when I grew up there. They would subsidize maybe 1 year it's soybeans, maybe 1 year it's corn. And the problem with that is that prior to that, farmers had a sustainable rotation to keep the ground nutrient filled. But when you grow corn in the same field year after year after year, because there's a subsidy, you deplete it of what the corn needs, and you're supposed to give it a rest and let it grow like alfalfa or whatever for a year or so. But my uncle taught me about crop rotation, and that's gone away with subsidies. But anyway, let's get to your we're already an hour in, and I do not want to miss the story of how you wound up in the Marines. And I wanted to go to the farm first because I didn't want to miss any of that stuff, important stuff on sustainable farming and how to stay out of debt and all that stuff. Very important stuff. I do want to talk about homeschooling at one point as well. And but let's go back to the beginning. How did you start out? How did you wind up in the Marine Corps? Give us some war stories, lessons learned, and take it away, brother.
Yeah. So basically, I grew up in a small town called Strong, Maine. I grew up in the 90s and, graduated high school in 2002. I was going to college at University of Maine at Farmington for my first year. Didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. Still don't. That's why I'm farming, I guess. But it's like the teachers, all they imparted on us at the time was you got to go to college to be successful. So it's like, well, I guess I got to go to college. None of my parents went to college. None of my grandparents went to college. But now at that point in time, it was easy to get, subsidies from the government to get a loan to go to college. So that's what I did. I played sports all through high school. I was an avid baseball player, so I played Legion ball, Babe Ruth, and all that stuff. And I was looking forward to actually playing some college ball. But because my grades sucked, I didn't get to play. I didn't get to play my freshman year. I was riding the pine because I was on whatever they call that. I had to get my grades up. But the problem that I had was if I was occupied, I was good. I had a couple jobs growing up. I worked at a gas station. One of those, you don't see them anymore. The full service gas stations where, I got to pump gas, sort bottles, stock shelves, check oil. Oh man, it's one of the best jobs I ever had because, what I learned at that job was that basically having the ability to talk to other people and make connections because at the end of the day it's really all about who you know and how you can utilize the resources that other people have to work things out and get in better situations, especially in small communities like we live in. We're a really small mill town, old timber town. And it's, so it's, having, personal relationships with people is what I learned from that job. But when I wasn't working, I got in trouble. So I was just hanging out with the wrong people. We like, we're hicks up here. We like to 4-wheel and off-road, and I did a lot of that, drinking beer and just hanging around with the wrong people. So one of the days, me and at the time buddy Jason, who previously he just passed a couple weeks ago from a heroin overdose, but we were out partying and drinking, and I came back and was getting ready to go into town on my 4-wheeler, and a state cop decided that he was going to chase me. So I tried to outrun him. I got away for a little while, but he caught me. And that was like I had been in trouble with the law previous to that. I gotten pulled over, lost my license. At the time that I got this DUI, I was under suspension for like the second time. So like with all my other stuff, they were looking at jail time, 6 months to a year, which scared the crap out of me because jail didn't sound too exciting. And the cop that the state police that arrested me kind of is like, hey dude, like he's listing off like all the things that I've done, and he's like, hey man, like you obviously need to go in a different direction. Have you ever thought about the military? And up to that point, that was not on my radar. In college, like I wasn't thinking about the military. Even like like when I was a junior in high school is when the towers fell or whatever, were imploded. So like other than that, like it wasn't really a consequence. Like I had friends that went into the military, but it was never really like it wasn't anything that was like put on my heart to do up until that point where I was like, well, the military can't be too bad compared to prison, so let's try that out. And it just so happened at the time, how God works, my cousin was a Marine recruiter in our district, and he's like, hey. And so I was actually looking at the Army too, because the Army had a 2-year program where you could be like a combat engineer, do 2 years and get out. And that was like appetizing because I was like, I don't think I want to make this a career. I want to have a useful skill when I get out. Yeah, anyway, I ended up in the Marines. I guess, they got better uniforms. I'm just going to say it. And
they do. They truly do.
And of course, having your cousin like, hey man, like I can hook you up. Cause like the other aspect of this was he got me in. It's technically a fraudulent enlistment because he got me in before all the stuff hit the system. It's funny because like I look at my records and it says like I lived in a different town than I did, because when they pulled the records report, my stuff wouldn't come up. and I'm like, wow, that was pretty good. So he got me back though. I thought I was going in to be either as a combat engineer or an electrician, but he put me in open contract, and that's the needs of the Marine Corps. They get to pick where you go from there. And I didn't realize that until I through boot camp, my drill instructors would make fun of me, and they're like, oh, you're going to be a photo fag. And they would like, go like this, Stevens. And they would make like jokes about different MOSs. And I'm like, I don't know what the heck they're talking about. And then at the end, they're like, you're open contract. And I'm like, I don't know what that is still. And they're like, yeah, the Marine Corps is going to pick for you where you go. And I was like, that sounds awesome. And so I didn't actually know what I was going to be until we went through MCT, which is like basically Marine Corps training for like if you're non-infantry. But what's that called? Yeah, Marine Corps combat training. And so that was fun. And then I got sent to California for radio operator school. So they, which, of course, everybody's like, oh, you're going to get killed. It's like, it's it's one of those jobs where you don't live very long. And I'm like, okay. And so after once we got through radio operator school, at that point is when they pick orders for you. And by the grace of God, at the time, they were standing up a new unit called Anglico, and it had been a previously old unit back in like Vietnam and stuff, but they had basically wound it down to a very small element. But once the war kicked off, they needed the Anglico back, and Anglico's Air Naval Gunfire Liaison Company. So basically, that is a unit that provides like 4-man teams, usually a JTAC, a forward observer, and a radio operator, and you'll attach to another unit. So, at the 3 deployments I did with Anglico, I worked with SEALs, even foreign military, and we attached to Marine infantry units. I even did a workup with an Army long range reconnaissance company. I can't remember exactly what they were reconnaissance. We did a workup in Louisiana.
Was that the 13 Romeo, the calf scout? I think it's
it
called.
Might have been. Yeah.
Those are they go forward of the lines to do recon and sometimes paint targets for missiles and stuff. That was actually was going to be my first MOS I was going to pick. I wanted to be infantry, and they were trying to talk me into some technical stuff because and I'll say this, Ryan's a very intelligent guy. That's why he got the commo job. If you score low on the ASVAB, they're gonna put you into an infantry slot or something that doesn't require, you still have to be able to get a clearance, of course. That's kind of one of the newer things, is everything requires a freaking clearance. That's why the background checks are so important. But when it comes to people who score high on the ASVAB, they're really going to try to fill those slots that are hard to fill for them. And that's why your open contract puts you in a commo position. We were talking about that yesterday. But anyway, I find that interesting because one of the first choices was going to be a Calf Scout for me. I think it was a Calf Scout was what they called it, but it's 13 Romeo. And then I wound up picking the commo one. So very similar path that we had. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I just found that interesting.
No worries. Yeah, it was cool because that working with Anglico, I got to see. I even worked PSD. My first deployment, I was PSD for a 2-star general, so I got to work with security forces dudes, and so I got to see like the whole spectrum of the military, different jobs, and then also see what like special ops kind of entails. So that's kind of when I picked. I was like, I'm not getting out at that point, because after my first deployment, my first wife left, and so I was kind of like, yeah, I might as well stay. And that's when I was like, well, I'm just going to go special ops, because I kind of realized early on that I didn't realize this till I got in the military, that a lot of people didn't want to be there and they didn't want to work hard. So you kind of had to put yourself in different units where people actually wanted to be there. And the best, avenue for that is to go to units that have selections. Fortunately, I did 3 deployments with Anglico from, I think it was 2005 to 2008. We did 3 tours to Iraq there. And then MARSOC was standing back up, Marine Special Operations Command, the Marine Raiders. They stood up in 2006, but when I was getting out ready for orders in 2008, MARSOC was standing up a fires platoon. So they were standing up guys that were going to be JTACs, so Joint Terminal Attack Controllers, basically the guy on the ground that is with the team that calls in close air support, kinetic strikes, artillery, any munitions basically that are coming into the battlefield, controlling the airspace and stuff like that, doing medevacs, casevacs, any of that stuff. So they were standing up basically the support element that would be sending them to the special operation teams. So I was able to go to school, get my JTAC qual, and then attach to a MARSOC team. And then I did 3 more deployments with MARSOC before I was asked to come up and screen out to go to Dev Group.
Real quick before we move on from that, and so for those who don't know the lingo, casevac and medevac, that's getting the casualties removed from the battlefield and getting them treated. Casevac stands for casualty evacuation. Medevac is medical evacuation. This is just the lingo we use. You also do music. I want to throw that in there real quick. You have, and I want to get to this point at some point today before we sign off. I want to get to how the methods we use to get past trauma, both physical and mental trauma. I know in the military we deal with it, but for those out there who aren't in the military, there's still trauma. You know, PTSD doesn't exist strictly inside the military. And you do music. And what I specifically want to ask you about before we move on from the casevac stuff is tell us the story about, I think it was like you said, it was like around a dozen folks you had to get out of a combat zone. And I remember in the song that you had written the lyrics to, the chopper pilot, like he said that the fuel light was on, but he waited.
So yeah, that was Operation Lexington. That was in 2009 it was my 4th deployment, but my first MARSOC deployment with the Marine Special Operations Team. We were paired up with the DEA fast teams, which those were like small teams that they had sent into Afghanistan to do the narco terrorism stuff, like to basically chase down the drug traffickers. And we were basically chasing HVTs in the drug trafficking ring, and then also hitting drug labs and big bazaars filled with drugs and all that stuff. And on that operation, we were hitting, it was a drug bazaar in Dari Boom, Afghanistan, which is northwestern Afghanistan. And we hit target went well. And we cleared it, blew up all the drugs. And then on exfil, I called a black LZ, which is basically black LZ means it's LZ that's not planned. It wasn't on our graphics. It wasn't looked at by any of the imagery guys for the 160th SOAR. But due to contact that we had on target, me and the ground force commander, my captain, deemed that we should probably do a closer exfil so we weren't dealing with potential, helicopters getting shot down. Unfortunately, the LZ that we picked was all sand. So on exfil, -2, the second bird browned out on nods. It was at night. It was a night exfil. And basically, he got disoriented from what we can tell. And the bazaar was basically east-west running bazaar in a valley, and on both sides were mountains, but basically the north side was high mountains. And when he came out off target, he was heading towards the mountains. And I'm guessing, based on, the investigation, that by the time his instruments told him that he was too low, it was too late for him to pull up. So he pulled pitch like hard, trying to get elevation. And I think he either stalled the aircraft or lost power or something. And it ended up, the aircraft ended up crashing back into the bazaar. And so we lost 10 guys. And it was 30 something wounded in the helicopter crash. So I was in the first bird that took off, and we're circling, and it took us a while to figure out what the heck was going on. And then they're like, okay, we're reinserting you guys. And we're like, okay. So they put us 300 meters away from the target. I was the first off the ramp, and I was scared, dude. I was like, this is going to suck. And we had an AC-130 gunship overhead, and he marked the crash site with his IR pointer. And I was like, well, let's go. And we ran to the crash site. The SF guys that we were working with were on the bird that crashed, and some of the DEA agents. And they had already set up a CCP, so a casualty collection point. They had already gotten just about everybody off the bird that they could get to. And then, so our pilot, I'll just call him Chief Warrant Officer Denton. He's retired now. So he was flying us, the first bird, and he stayed on the deck. It was over 30 minutes. I'm not sure the exact time. It felt like 2 hours. He stayed on the deck while we made, I think it was like 3 or 4 trips from the crash site back to the bird to bring wounded back. And then, all at the same time, we're getting, people were coming up from the other villages and starting to get a fight on. So we were engaging guys. At one point, the 160th Chinooks have, they have Gatling guns on them and 240 machine guns. And at one point they're shooting their gows at the enemy while I'm matching them with A10 gun runs. So it was a wild night. But we got,
it's good to have some A10s behind you though. Those are some pretty impressive aircraft.
They are.
Yeah, they fly them out here. I'm near Leonardwood, and they fly them. And for those who don't know, AC or A10 Warthog, it's basically an engine with a gun, and then a guy rides in it. They shoot. Was it a 20 millimeter or 30? I forget what they shoot.
30 millimeter.
That one. There you go.
Yeah.
They can only do short bursts because it will actually stall the aircraft out of the sky,
or melt the gun.
Yep, and they have two engines. They're fast, low. They fly low, fast, agile.
Yeah, they're designed to kill tanks.
Yeah, tank columns. Right. So I have a personal warmth in my heart for the AC-130, or not the AC, the A10 Warthog, just because of what they can do. And my brother had told me, he's Air Force, that probably about 7 years or so ago, he said they were going to start removing them from service, and I'm like, but why? They're like the perfect aircraft. He saw them when he was in Iraq. He's seen them. It was either Iraq or Afghanistan. I forget which deployment, but he's seen them come in like 90% full of holes, and the pilot didn't realize they were missing half a wing, and they were able to land the craft. It's a very, very impressive aircraft.
Yeah, very survivable. Yeah. It's a good cast platform. Same with the Apaches. Love those guys. Those guys. Apaches, A10s, and the AC-130s got me out of a lot of really tight situations. But yeah, so after that deployment, I did 2 more with MARSOC. I was wounded twice at MARSOC, and then I got, I was fortunate to get asked to go screen out up at Dev Group, which, some people refer to that place as SEAL Team 6. So I screened out and went up there. And did 4 more deployments with those guys, attached to one of their squadrons. A different role this time. I was a JTAC, but I wasn't with the teams on target all the time. My primary role was a fire support chief. So basically, I was the guy sitting at the desk. I do all the coordination for air support. And then anything that went kinetic for strikes that was basically post or pre-target execution for the SEALs, we'd do stuff like that. But mostly supporting the team. And then all the SEAL teams, they have CCTs, which are Air Force controllers, doing the same job that I did. But those guys are specifically designed to go with the SEALs. So
real quick, can we pause it? I want to give the ladies a chance as well to jump in here. And this is important because your job as a fire control chief, right? Or fire support, what do you call it? Fire support chief. This is something we talked about. Yeah, this is something we talk about all the time, and I sat through a secret briefing about some stuff that's supposed to go on by 2030, Army of 2030 stuff that you won't see on the Army Times or the Army's website. And all I can tell you is that job, when you work that job, that is a person making a decision, calling in stuff. Do you believe that's going to go away? And I want to let the ladies talk about this, because AI and unmanned aerial, like drone swarms, may be making those decisions for us in the future. How important do we think it is to actually have a person in the chair making those decisions on when we go kinetic? Let's go to Karen first and see what her thoughts are on the AI and when it comes to war and where we're headed. I know you already kind of know where the Army wants to go, Karen, but your thoughts on it?
Well, it's very concerning, well, we know that the Lavender program was used in Gaza, and people were targeted that way through using AI through Lavender, and then there are reports that AI may be involved with the targeting going on in other areas, and it's highly concerning. It seems, and the main or one issue is that there may not even be a human in the process, in the line of authority as far as targeting and okaying the targets. It sounds like there are several cases where that may be removed. And I was watching Into the Microcosm last night with Jimmy Jean and some, it's Epic and Rio, and they were talking about an AI that has gone rogue that's on the internet and running amok. I don't know if that's true or not, but there's always the danger that these things will get out of control. But I think the human factor and the human conscience about who we're targeting, not supposed to target civilians. There are war is an awful thing, but there are some guidelines theoretically agreed to during war. And I think that using the AI makes it all too easy to take that human factor, the concern about innocent targets, women, white women, children, civilians, hospitals, schools, to remove all of that and have the decision making out of our hands, which I think is a lot harder to kill somebody if you know who they are and you make that decision yourself rather than turning it over to a program. So it's incredibly concerning.
All right, before we go to Ryan, Ashley, your thoughts on it?
Well, actually, my question was more about for Ryan. So one of the things that has been part of my my journey on truth seeking, whatever you want to say, is to really feel like that there is an evil that controls the military industrial complex. While I'm not saying that soldiers are evil, many people are deceived and they thought that they were helping their country and that they were doing something to make the world better, safer, creating opportunities for themselves. So I don't want you to take it that way. But my question is, where do you stand, first of all, on your view of military industrial complex? Do you see them as part of the powers and principalities that we discussed at the beginning of the show? And second of all, when did the mask really fall for you? Because when I was listening to one of your other episodes, you had 10 deployments. You had traumatic brain injury. And your wife have been through so much, and you're also seeing fallen soldiers. This is one of the things that I think about, is that the servicemen and women are truly fed to the meat grinder and left to deal with the fallout. And if they don't find their way back spiritually in the way that you and your wife have, then I think it could lead them down a very dark path. And please correct me if there's anything that you disagree with, but I wondered, when did you get to the point where the mask fell away for you and you were like, this is no longer an organization that I can be part of because they're not taking care of me when I need help and when I'm suffering, but also they would gladly sacrifice myself and my wife to the meat grinder?
Yeah, no, it took a while for me. Jason says I'm smart, but I'm a slow learner. I learned through pain. So I didn't really start like asking questions, like real questions, until the last two deployments when I was in Somalia. And Somalia's got some pretty neat history. I stood on top of one of the 5-star hotels in Mogadishu, and I'm standing there looking at how beautiful it is here, like looking out in the ocean. And I'm like, this used to be a 5-star hotel. So what happened between now, in the 1970s and now for this place to just circle the drain and be a complete crap hole? And then, you couple that with like, like when I was with SEAL Team 6, we were sending guys, teams out to Somalia and some other places. And it's like, it just didn't seem necessary for what a tier 1 mission is supposed to be. And I'd ask those questions like, like, why are we really here? Because like, it kind of seems like we're just misutilizing resources, and you just have these guys continuously deployed. So like when I was there, our workup cycle was usually we'd have 4 months on alert, which is basically you're within 45 minutes of the base on pager in case there's a hostage rescue or something that you get paged out for. You have to be, within 45 minutes to get back to base, and then H-4, you're taking off and going somewhere. So 4 months out of the year, I'd be on alert. 4 months you'd be doing your workup, and then 4 months you're deployed. And that's a continuous cycle. So like while I was there, I was lucky to have 2 months sleeping in my own bed. The rest of the time I was either deployed, training, or gone somewhere. And so it kind of, you get in these cycles where people think, well, why didn't you see it? It's like, I couldn't see it. Like your blinders are on, you're focused on the mission. You have I didn't have social media while I was there. I didn't look at the news because it was a distraction. I couldn't second guess what I had to do, because, some of the stuff we were doing is from POTUS are no fail missions. So if you can't fail. So it was very stressful, but then some of the stuff that we were doing kind of like opened my eyes to like, why are we here? It kind of just seems like an infantry battalion or a company could come over here and do the same thing. But then when you realize like the whole boots on the ground thing of counting how many people and resources are in certain places, like because we were doing 4-month rotations, the America or the United States military wasn't counting us in Somalia because we weren't there long enough to count the forces. So like it's this big shell game that they're playing with that. And I mean, ultimately I didn't completely wake up until I got out of the military. I didn't leave.
Oh, he's frozen up. I'll dovetail that. Talking about boots on ground. I've mentioned this with Gardner Goldsmith. Until you hit 50% or 51% of the allotted task force, you're not considered boots on ground. So they do play that shell game, and then they also supplement with, I guess you can call them mercenaries, contractors. And we also have other Americans out there on the logistics side. Sorry, I jumped in, Ryan, because you kind of froze up for a moment. But yeah, I was talking about the shell game you're talking about. And that's why they say we're not in this place, we're not in that place. We're supposedly in Poland, we're not in Ukraine, but guess what? We are in Ukraine. They just don't meet that boots on ground requirement. But the money's being spent and the soldiers' lives are being put at risk. And as you said, they just want to accomplish the mission, and it takes an aha moment for each and every soldier to realize, what are we doing here? And I hit that moment on my first deployment. So I feel what you're saying. So go ahead, brother. You're unfroze now. So go ahead.
Yeah. Where did I leave off before I froze up?
You were talking about the shell game with the boots on ground and what you saw.
Yeah. And then coupled with that, it's basically like the way that they were using guys in the command, like the SEALs were treated completely different than the support guys. And like I had, been doing continuous deployments. So I got out there, I had RJ before my final deployment. I think it was my 10th deployment. And Steph had, we were trying to do it all natural birth, but Navy medicine had other plans and basically gave her too much Pitocin, and she had to do an emergency C-section. We know now that that was their protocol. We overheard them talking about how many C-sections they had done that day. It completely disgusted me. It was funny because I fired the doctor. I told her to get the hell out. I didn't want to see her. But she ended up coming back in to do the C-section, so I don't know. But anyway, so she was struggling through that, and then 20 days later, I deploy. So during that deployment, like halfway through the deployment, we were doing 4-month deployments. A couple other SEALs show up, and I'm like, "Where the hell were those guys?" And they're like, "Oh, they had babies, so they stayed back." And I'm like, "Oh. Roger that." I was just like, dude, what am I doing, man? They don't give a crap about me. And then, so after, I think this is my 9th deployment, I basically came back to my command and said, hey, like, I have a serious drinking problem and I need help. Like, I need to go to rehab. Like, I'm using alcohol, painkillers, like anything I can actually get a hold of to self-medicate.
And Ryan, sorry to interrupt you, but you had already experienced very serious injury by this point as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, I on my 2012 deployment, I took a grenade to the face, shattered my lower orbital. I took a bunch of shrapnel throughout my whole body. The grenade was, within 10 to 15 feet when it landed. So, I lost consciousness. But then coupled with, I've had a lot of different close explosions. So dropping danger close, Carl Gustav's going off next to your head, so yeah, a lot of exposure for sure. Yeah.
That's I'm glad you brought us there, Ashley, because the next thing I wanted to talk about, because I know we're already an hour and a half in. I don't know how much time y'all have, but one of the important things I wanted to cover today, we started with where you are today with the farm, went back into your history, and we could probably talk the history for hours upon hours for sure. But I want to talk about the road to recovery. Specifically some of the injuries that we endure, not just in the military, but in life in general, are emotional ones. So I know you had your physical injury and your medical retirement, which you were, I think, about 15 years, I believe. So you're on track to do probably 30 years. You were a gunny, you would have been a sergeant major in no time. But the emotional injuries I've experienced, I haven't had any real physical injuries other than just beating my body down, carrying a lot of stuff. We talked about that before, carrying all the stuff over probably loose gravel and whatnot, or dirt. But let's talk about that. You and your wife went through what we call it the WTU in the Army, the Warrior Transition Unit. Where they give you time, they assign you to a unit so they can replace you in your other unit, because it sucks to have somebody out of the fight. So they have to do that. And you guys latched on to God. You got out together, you had a plan, and then that brings us back to the beginning, which is your farm. So I don't know if we want to talk about that, and maybe let the ladies ask their questions related to that. My personal thing that I would say is that being deployed sucked. It sucked to be away from the family, but they say in the Army, they say the hardest job is actually being the spouse of the deployed person. So I would love to get Karen and Ashley's take on that, as far as if you were a spouse and you knew that your significant other was out there doing that, how you would feel about it, and then the road to recovery and the pathway to God. And I'll shut up now for a while. Karen, you want to go first?
Yeah, I was curious also about the role that farming, that moving, out of the system and being in the military, moving toward the farm and working with nature and natural processes, maybe a slower pace, less traumatic input or less of the news cycle, or moving at a slower pace, more freedom to move at the pace that works for you, as you talked about, and producing something, growing something, having the satisfaction of putting some work into something and seeing it come to fruition, doing that with your partner and your children, what role that played in helping to heal you, and possibly some suggestions for other people that have gone through trauma, and how to heal that trauma or start to move toward that. Because I think even if we haven't been in the military, most of us have been through quite a bit of trauma and continue to do so. And so we that's something we all need to learn how to handle, how to take care of ourselves and find some peace in ourselves and with the world. And so that was a few questions I had.
Yeah. Yeah, my road to recovery, I think, is still ongoing. But yeah, when I think getting sober was like the first thing that really started the ball rolling, because once I got sober, I couldn't hide anymore. All those things that I was trying to suppress, and my body just started like going haywire. And I had some really, traumatic events where I just wasn't functioning normally. I ended up actually in the psych ward for a short period of time, right before SEAL Team 6 got rid of me, because I was just like, I was so done with guys not taking care of me and saying that things mattered, and then they did the opposite. And that's actually where I gave myself to Christ, was in the psych ward. I walked over to a shelf and I was just looking for a book so I could just read something. And the whole shelf was books of Bibles. and so I was like, oh, I'll just grab this green one. And it had like the cool camo print on it. And it was like a book that was written for the wife that her husband's deployed. And I'm like, what the heck? And I started reading it, and I'm just like, dude, like, the stuff that my wife had to go through, I don't think I could have handled. Like, she was working, she was still a Marine too, so she had to do a 9 to 5 at the Marine Corps and take care of my son while I'm deployed. Of course, she dealt with my alcoholism for a long time too, but that kind of kicked everything off. And then I had to address my problems. So I went to a PTSD clinic up in Ohio during my medical retirement process. And that was actually a VA facility. And I actually left treatment halfway through because they were abusing the veterans in the clinic. And it was another like step in the direction towards like waking up that, I mean, this whole industrial complex, even the medical industrial complex, they're all intertwined together. They were trying to get me, they got me on meds. Like I was taking SSRIs at this time, the anxiety meds. I was on an SSRI, anxiety meds. I was on I used to get headaches so bad, like migraines so bad, that I would throw up and couldn't like function. So they had me on one of those meds too. But when I look back, it's kind of like maybe my body was just telling me like, hey dude, you need a break. Now they've come out with like this cool like operator syndrome, like saying, you know, but it's just like, we're not meant to go to war this much, and our body's telling us that it's not good. So it was a long process, but, and of course, like, you know, I was new to Christ, so I'm trying to navigate that at the same time, and I'm trying to get healthy, which was rough because, you know, I had some people that came alongside me that were in the military that said they were in Christ, that they were Christians, and then they didn't. It did when push came to shove. They didn't produce. So it was definitely a challenging time. We were fortunate to have a good church that we were part of in Chesapeake at the time. That I really leaned on them heavily, so that helped. But once, you know, so once we broke away from the military, I ended up, by the grace of God, we were able to leave 6 months early from my retirement to come up to the farm to start farming under like this, I can't remember the program, but it's basically, there's another farm in our area that was going to basically mentor us. So we were able to leave a little bit early to get things started. So that was a blessing. And that's kind of when we started like investigating stuff. And I realized, like, man, like, the VA is going to have me on this med train for the rest of my life. And I was like, I do not want to be on that for the rest of my life. So we went heavily into, homeopathic and naturopathic medicine. My wife's like, she knows all that stuff now. Like she's read books and books and books. And, I know enough to get in trouble, but no, it's been helpful. And, it took like 2 or 3 years before, after getting out to get off all the meds, and to really work on like doing body cleanses and getting the heavy metals out of your body. Cause you got to think, like, all the vaccines that we took, like, I can't imagine how many toxins that are inside of our bodies. And like, I found out later that inflammation was like a big thing that was causing my body havoc. Like when I got out, I was having to get back injections in my lower back every 3 months so I could walk. And by the grace of God, I had a Christian buddy swing by the farm once. This is probably like 4 or 5 years ago. And he's like, hey, have you ever thought about getting off milk? And I'm like, not really, dude. I love milk. Like, I was a gallon a week guy. And he's like, I got off it. And he's like, all my inflammation went away. My back's good, and I had back problems. And then I had carpal tunnel in both wrists and just inflammation problems. And I went off milk, and, it took like 6 months, but didn't have to get the back injections anymore. My wrist pain went away. Like, I lost 20 pounds. Like, so this, and then we played around with a lot of different, like, I don't know if it's called substitution or elimination diets, basically eliminating stuff one at a time, to make sure that it actually is something that I should be ingesting into my body. Like corn was another one that we've completely eliminated because it just doesn't do good with our gut biome and stuff like that. So it's been a long road. We didn't wake up to the vaccine thing till, I think it was our second child. Our RJ and our first daughter, like, still got some of the vaccines. And then we had another Christian buddy we had 3 different people, like, within the year that came and were like, hey, have you ever looked into the vaccine thing? Like, if you think it's like really good for your children or not. And I'm like, well, I should probably look into it. And so I bought like 14 different books, like on both sides of the fence, like in the middle. And I read them all during the wintertime. And like at the end of it, I'm just like, oh yeah, I can't give any of these. Yeah, I was like, all right, well, throw that out, and thank God that was pre-COVID, because you went through, through that. Like,
that was God putting people in your path. I think that's important that we be aware of that, alert to it. But that's all I have.
Yeah, and it's
I have a couple comments. Or I was wondering, Ryan, about the homeopathy or the more natural type healthcare. So it sounds like you're really into that, which I am too. I've been through the same journey with vaccines and realizing that, and it was pre-COVID. Thank goodness I knew about that. So there was no question in my mind about whether to take that vaccine or not. I already was not taking vaccines. And so that was interesting. And the childbirth story is horrendous, but we've talked about that on our shows too. I also wanted to mention that another podcaster that we work with in our community, Angry Tiger, we do an addiction recovery panel once a month for alcoholics and drugs and other addiction problems. So if you ever wanted, we have a really good time with a variety of people, and we have a retired drug counselor that comes and talks with us. So if you're ever interested in doing that, just to talk about recovery and the different aspects of it, and we try to be very positive in it. So that's something, if that might be something you're interested in. It's in on the last Wednesday evening every month, and so
yeah, that's awesome.
I just wanted to mention that too.
Beneficial. Yeah. Yeah, I'll be celebrating.
It's pretty cool.
Sober here, June.
Oh, well, fantastic!
That would be great to see you on there. It's always a great show. It's one of my favorite shows to watch. Is Angry Tiger's Addiction Specials, and with Ann, the retired drug counselor, always great. I mean, they talk about,
and we're doing those the last Wednesday every month.
And they talk about everything from cell phones to social media to anything that might suck you in, and how to break free from it, and personal stories. It's great. Let's go to Ashley and get Ashley's final questions. And do you want to field that question that Deb had asked, Ashley, while you're at it?
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask from our chat. Deb wanted to know if you know about Kay Griggs.
Nope, I don't think so.
Okay. Yes. So she was the wife of U.S. Marine Colonel George Griggs and a personal friend of White House correspondent Sarah McClendon. And during a bitter divorce in 1998, Griggs gave a remarkable 7.5 hour long video interview for her pastor, Rick Strawcutter. And per Griggs, her husband was involved in wet ops, which made him bitterly depressed. So essentially, he would drink himself into a blackout state, and but it was dealing with some of the, the nefarious, essentially like shadow government side of the military. So, but if you're not familiar, maybe you want to check it out at some other point.
Yeah, I think her testimony is about 6 hours long.
7.5 according to this, but either way, many hours, and her relaying the conversation that she had with her husband. So maybe you'll be interested in checking that out if you want.
Yeah, if you could send me the link, I'll look at it. Yeah, I think that was before I came in. That was 1998.
I'm going to drop that in our private chat here, Ryan, so you can take a peek. So this was a Twitter thread, but it has the archive.org link to view her testimony.
Perfect. Thanks.
Did you have anything else, Ashley?
No, I mean, I think there's certainly there's a lot to discuss as far as Ryan overcoming and everything that he's dealt with. But I think that we have a pretty good understanding of where he came from, his backstory, his experience, and then the life that he and his wife have made and the sacrifices that they have had to make of material goods and time and a big house and all these other things in order to facilitate the life that they have now, which is incredible. And I think that getting to the point that you explained about sacrificing a nice big house and new cars and all these things, that if people can get past that, then you could really do amazing things. But sometimes that is a really hard step to take, or even considering stepping outside of that particular paradigm is very difficult for people to imagine. So I hope that somebody who maybe wouldn't have considered that will hear your story and will think about that in the way that they could potentially pivot their life.
Yeah, I think the big thing with that is my best friend that I've known since I grew up here. He always told me that it's like chasing a lifestyle instead of just living life. You actually have to figure out like what kind of life you want to live, and basically organize yourself around that. And that's kind of like what we've done on the farm here. I drive a 24, 25-year-old vehicle. We do have a nice house. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, we have a nice old farmhouse. It's beautiful. But, we've kind of, I used to chase the Joneses. I used to drive like nice cars and all that crap. I'm over that. It's just materialism. It's hard. But once you shift into, honoring God and family, you realize that the things that are really important are things that are non-material. Like, that's one of my biggest reasons why getting out of debt is because now I can spend more time with my family. I have 6 children. We were blessed to be able to have the last 3 children and home birth them at the farm, outside the medical industrial complex. So, I mean, it's been a blessing, all that trauma that I had to experience was worth it for what we have now. It's made me a better person. It's gotten me closer to God. Not that I wish that anybody else would have to go through that, but I mean, God has a way of, sharpening us, and, you don't get sharp by getting slapped with a wet fish. You get sharpened by getting put into the fire and honed like a sword. So,
I would like to say that I guess we're going to end it off with another Bible verse, Matthew 6, verse 33. And we actually made a song out of this when I was a teenager going to church. Seek first the kingdom of God, and these things will be added unto you. And chasing the Joneses, if people think that advertising doesn't work on you, it does. It really does. And I really appreciate what you've done. We're going to kind of wrap it up here. We're at the 2-hour mark almost already. I do want to plug and give final thoughts. I did want to talk about homeschooling and talking about the importance of those memories, even though those are painful for us. They are who we are. So anyway, yeah. Let me go ahead and let's get to the plug-in, and then we'll do a roundtable, and you ladies can ask anything you have left. This is your last chance in the live chat if you have questions for Ryan to throw them in there. And here we go. This is your website. Again, these are down in the description of this show. It will also be on Substack, and it will be on the Spotify audio in the description to find where you can find Ryan's farm. Beautiful farm, man. 100 acres is quite impressive.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I do want to shout out the Wounded Warriors Project as well. That's one of the places I really support. Look at that beautiful farm. You have your location there, and let's go on to what you offer people. You've been talking to me the last couple days about the syrup season, the sap season. That's a short season, a lot of work to do, and I'm glad. I know that's the season right now, and you took the time out to take with us today, so I really appreciate that. But the grass grazed beef, which is sold out right now. Oh wow! But you do raise cattle, and they're grass fed, not corn fed, which is very, very important. A story I've been wanting to get to that Levi, a listener of ours and a friend of mine, Levi, sent me, was they're actually feeding cattle food now that's designed to genetically alter the cattle. Now, just sit on that for a while. We're going to cover this when I get more information, because that has far-reaching implications.
Yeah, that's wild stuff. I mean,
yeah,
we're grass-fed, grass-finished. We slaughter on the farm. Like, it's beautiful. Once you can put it in the right context, it's not bad. It's sustainable.
If you haven't had a grass-fed hamburger or steak, then you're missing out on life. I'm telling you right now. There was a place in Colorado Springs when I was stationed at Fort Carson. that's all they served. It was high plains cattle. I believe they were non-injected, by the way. They were local. This place bought them locally. Bought the food or the beef locally. Nothing like it in the world. Nothing like it in the world. It melts in your mouth. And yeah, anyway, you also have a book out, which is how we titled the show today, Out of the Darkness, that people can get. You also do, and matter of fact, let me just let you talk about what you have to offer openly here. You got your book, you got your music, which I think is a great outlet to part of that, the memories that we have to hold because they are who we are, but we have to deal with the trauma that comes with it. So if you want to talk about what you have to offer on your website, book and the music and stuff.
Yeah, the book actually started as basically a tool for me to work on my trauma and get it on paper. And when I learned that from one of the therapies that I went through for just writing stuff down and getting it out. So the book was that first tool that I used to try and get my story out there. And then, just to, let other veterans know and anybody else that's been through traumatic, injuries and stuff, and that there is a path to healing. It's not easy. But with God, all things are possible. And then the music, I started playing around with that this winter. Another. I've always liked writing poetry. I grew up, writing poetry, and songs are kind of like poetry. So, and AI is to the point now where it's good enough so you can convey a song with somebody else singing it, because you don't want me singing. I can just say that. Like no one would listen to that. So, it's another outlet for me to, get that stuff out there. I did my music album. And so it was basically songs that were written for each individual chapter. And I've done some more since then. I've actually been converting a lot of the Psalms out of the Bible into songs too. Because my children love listening to that stuff. So yeah, I've done, so it's good. It's a good outlet for sure. And then everything else on the website, we put the syrups and stuff, we actually haven't been selling beef too much, because when we scaled back, we basically just shut that off to the public, because when I scaled back, I had to look at all my things I was selling that was like making money on, and beef was not one of them. It's a hard game selling beef. So, no, it's the syrup stuff is kind of a labor of love. It's a lot of work too. But it's founded in my childhood. I have good memories of my grandfather and my father growing up. We would all tap trees together, collect syrup, and then boil around this. Like, we had this makeshift pan that our cousin welded up for us, and they basically took 2 oil barrels and welded them together, and we put the pan on it, and we made maple syrup as a family together. So I'm just trying to keep that family tradition going, and then also share true Maine wood-fired maple syrup with the rest of the world, because most producers now aren't doing wood-fired. Any big operation is doing oil-fired, and it's a completely different taste. So just trying to keep that old tradition alive.
My wife told me, when I told her what you do, Ryan, I was like, I'm real excited to have this guy on, and I told her your backstory and about the syrup. She's like, you're gonna buy syrup from him, aren't you? And I'm like, no, I won't, honey, because she's kind of like limited me on how much I can support everyone out there. But yeah, I'm gonna buy some syrup from you. So she was right. But anyway, let me plug you your other sites, and then let's go around the table with Karen. And I want to plug Karen and Ashley for what they got going on as well, and we have to do shout outs. So let me throw this up. I did find out that you have a Gab site. I found that out from watching one of your other interviews. So if you want to,
yeah, I don't do much on Gab anymore.
I don't really either.
Me and Andrew Torba had a little spat a little while ago, and I haven't been able to grow there. So I actually moved from Gab to Substack a couple of years ago, and I do most of my stuff on Substack.
Yeah, I've actually went through, and again, there are links to the Substack. I don't have the Gab linked in the description, but there's a lot of great writing you do in here, and you have some of your music stuff in there, as well as your bio. So if anybody wants a more detailed on the military side of the house, because I know we tried not to get too deep into that today, but yeah, the full bio is in here. Very impressive, highly decorated. Yeah, absolutely great. So anything else you want to plug, Ryan, before I hand it over to the ladies?
No, thanks for having me on. This has been a pleasure.
Fantastic. All right, Karen.
Okay, I'd like to say my son-in-law loves maple syrup, so I did buy him some fairly expensive bottles of maple syrup last year for Christmas. So I'm going to be hitting you up for some for him this year. It's one of his favorite things. I think it's a delicacy. It's so much better than the artificial or type syrups. I won't even eat those or allow them in my house. But I agree with you. We do learn and grow through our traumas and our trials. If your life is too simple and too easy, you don't really develop the character that so many of us have. I know I am a better person for the things that I've been through. And I think that's true for all of us, but we do have to heal. So that's important too. And working on that is also, critical. It sounds like you've done that too. So it was a true pleasure to meet you. You're an amazing person with many, many talents. And it seems to me that you're a lifelong learner, that you love to continue learning and growing and exploring things. So that's fantastic. And I wanted to say that I'm the assistant to DJ Angry Tiger at Saturday nights at 8:30. He does a set list, and then I take requests. So any music choice you have, it doesn't matter, classical to rap to disco, rock and roll, classic rock, country, whatever you like. I'll relay the requests to the DJ Angry Tiger, and we do that for a couple of hours, and we have a great time. So there's no talking about the events of the day or anything traumatic. So join us tonight at 8:30 for on Angry Tiger's Den channel in Rumble, 8:30 Eastern. And I'm doing a Botox podcast with Courtney Turner on April 21st, but we don't have the time set yet. And that's about it. We were on Don Jeffrey's show yesterday, and I called in to Enter the Microcosm last night, and that was really fun. So that's what I've been up to, and I hope everybody has a great weekend. Do something nice for yourself and something nice for somebody else. That'll do it for me. Thank you.
Right on. And Ashley, I don't know if you would mind, but after you provide any final thoughts or questions, do you want to do the shout outs for everybody?
Sure. Yeah, I don't mind. Yeah, thank you so much, Ryan, for taking the time. You're obviously very busy with your farm, your business, and your family, and everything else that you're doing. So thank you so much. We don't take it lightly. We appreciate it very much. I know the chat enjoyed what you had to say today. So that has been a wonderful conversation, and it's great speaking with you. And then as far as me, I launched my show. So you can find me on, Jason has allowed me to stream on the Nights of the Storm. So you can find my 2 episodes there. This last week, it was a little bit of a rough start. My guest was not there yet. I was freaking out, but he ended up showing up, and we had a really good conversation about his perspective from being from Lebanon, and his family is still there, and what they have experienced in the recent bombing, but also what they have dealt with his entire life. So you can find me on my Rumble channel or YouTube, Think Change Repeat. And then, yeah, as Karen said, we went on Dawn's show yesterday, had a good time. And then I joined Nature Boy Dave of the Third Rail podcast for a conversation last night, which was really, really good. So I am not going to be doing a show this coming Thursday because I'm going to be out of town. But after that, I'm going to try to be weekly. I'm not 100% sure if it's that day exactly, maybe a little later. I know that's during Guard's time frame. I'm still trying to figure things out, but otherwise, anyone, if you want to get in touch, you can reach out on Twitter, or you can always email me at thinkchangerepeat@gmail.com. So that's all I got there. And then if I may, Jason, go ahead and get into our chat, or the chat call out. Now, normally everyone knows that I love to blame Jason if anyone got missed. Unfortunately, I was keeping up with it today. So if I missed you, I have to take responsibility for that. So we have White Wolf, Sam of SMU Hasky, Little John, Big Ron, Bri Deb Mac, Harps, Ronnie Omelets, Spirit of the Age, LT Oracle of Truth, Guard Goldsmith, Misfit 1904, Tom Cooper, TK2 Beyond, Radio Sack, Kuda Bing, iHandy, Harry Junkman, Dad Guy 24, Patrick, Conspiriality, Angry Tiger, Nostradamus, Andy VW 1980, but that is actually our friend Anna and Imperialism, Hemp Car, and we did hear very briefly from our friend Doc Spoiler. He's actually working today and he's listening as he is doing things. And then I wanted to let you know that he has his movie night presentation tonight, which is, I don't know, I put it somewhere, don't mess with the Zohan or something like that. And so they're presenting a comedy, and you can get the link for that in his Discord. And if you need any help with that, feel free to hit me up. That's all I got.
Yeah, I think that's an Adam Sandler. I think it's an Adam Sandler or Happy
It
Madison
is.
production. Yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you for all the chat that showed out today. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and close this down. It has been over 2 hours, and I want to thank Ryan again so much. Gunny, thank you for coming out, Gunny. Always going to be a Gunny. There is no such thing as a prior Marine. We love your story, and I think it's an inspiration to all who may want to change their life, improve their life, overcome any kind of trauma that they have. And you should think about starting your own podcast. But for now, people can go to your Substack and read your writings. So hopefully anytime you want to come on, man, get a hold of me, and can I give you your information out to the ladies in case they want to get you on for there?
Of course. Yeah, I appreciate it. This has been awesome. Thank you, guys.
All right. Now I'm going to ask Karen, and she didn't know I was going to ask her this, but will you close this out with the saying we always use?
I'd be glad to. Keep your sword sharp, keep your armor tight, and shine your light. Have a great week, everybody.
Was he a farmer, a teacher, just a man holding an icon? The villagers swore he was clean, but intel said go. War's a crooked dealer, shuffles truth and doubt. Now every rooftop's got a demon I can't block out. Tell me, Lord, what submarine's heart supposed to do when the nightmares come like mortars and the scotch won't get you through? I traded camel for a porch swing, but the battle never ends. Just a different kind of fight, making peace with all my sins.